I have been looking forward to this video for a very long time. Usually we're making soap with only one type of lye, which is sodium hydroxide. And for those of you who are completely new to soap making, sodium hydroxide is what you use to convert your oils, butters into soap. But in this video, we're making a dual lye shaving soap, and we're using two different types of lye. It is one of the most interesting formulas I have ever made. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly what each ingredient does, and most importantly, you will be able to make the shaving soap yourself. And for those of you who are new here, my name is Perry, and for the past 5 years, I have been working in the biotech industry, focusing on skincare ingredients, and I'm obsessed with understanding formulation and the why behind things. And my aim with this channel is to inspire you to start your own soap making and skincare journey, and most importantly, not to only learn how to copy recipes, but how to design your own recipes based on your own goals and how to understand everything behind each ingredient we add. And if you're completely new here and you would like a free PDF that shows how you can make 6 completely new skincare products that we use every single day with only 7 ingredients, and I did that to prove to you that you don't need 100 of different ingredients to make soap or other skincare. You need very few ingredients, tweak the ratios and the formulation, and you have a completely new product. If you want this, comment "I want the formulation" and I will send to you as soon as I see your comment. So first of all, let's start with the formula that we are going to use, the recipe, and understand each step, each ingredient before we go hands-on and make it ourselves. So let's start with looking at our ingredients. So for this recipe, we're gonna first start with 50% stearic acid. Now, stearic acid is not an oil. It is a pure fatty acid that exists naturally in many oils and butters like shea butter, cocoa butter, beef tallow, lard, palm oil, and so on. So when stearic acid saponifies, meaning when stearic acid reacts with sodium hydroxide or lye, it produces sodium stearate, one of the hardest and most stable soap molecules that exist. Now, sodium stearate is basically something that adds a lot of creaminess and structure to your soap, and it also is something that makes it last very long. So the stearic acid is basically adding creaminess and is doing a structural work in our soap. Then we have 30% beef tallow. Beef tallow is an amazing ingredient because it contains both palmitic acid and stearic acid. One alternative to beef tallow is cocoa butter or lard or palm oil, because those also have a high concentration of palmitic acid. And basically what palmitic acid does is that it adds, once it reacts with sodium hydroxide, it adds excellent lather stability. Not just volume, but stability. And combined with stearic acid, the tallow is contributing to both lather and the structural longevity of the soap. And now let's go to the rest of our ingredients. We're gonna add 10% coconut oil. Coconut oil is high in lauric and myristic acid, and this is what will add a bit of foam, a bit of bubbles in our soap. Then we have olive oil. Olive oil is high in oleic acid. We're gonna add 5% of that, which is gonna add conditioning properties to our lather. Beef tallow also has a lot of oleic acid, which adds a lot of conditioning already. That's why we don't need so much olive oil. And then we add 5% castor oil. Castor oil is high in ricinoleic acid, and this is what amplifies our lather, basically. So now we looked at the different ingredients that we are gonna use: beef tallow, stearic acid, coconut oil, olive oil, and castor oil. Before we go to soap calc and actually make the recipe, let's just talk about why we do a dual lye recipe for this soap. So what is dual lye? For this soap, we're using 40% sodium hydroxide and 60% potassium hydroxide. As you know, sodium hydroxide leads to solid bars, while potassium hydroxide leads to more softer paste bars and liquid soap. And when you combine the two in a 40 to 60% ratio, you get something in between. Potassium hydroxide, what it does here is that it softens the crystal structure of the soap, creating a better texture for shaving. And we have to calculate the recipe 2 times. One with sodium hydroxide and one with potassium hydroxide. Okay, so let's now take a look on how we calculate the recipe. We choose sodium hydroxide here in the type of lye that leads to a solid soap. We're choosing our weight of oils to be 500 grams, our water to lye ratio to be 2:1, superfat we choose it to be 5%, and then fragrance we choose it to be 40 grams per kilo of oils. We're gonna also talk about the fragrance later. And because we have 500 grams of total oils, the fragrance amount is gonna be 20 grams. Then we go here. Basically here you have every oil and butter and substance you can think of. And we choose the substances that we are using for this recipe. We click the plus button here and we add them. So we have 50% stearic acid, 30% tallow, 10% coconut oil, 5% castor oil, and 5% olive oil. Once we do that, we click view recipe summary. And now we basically have all the information we need. So here it tells us that you have to add 68 grams of lye, and then it tells you that you have to add 250 grams of stearic acid, 150 grams of tallow, 50 grams of coconut oil, and so on. Now, as I said before, we're going to use a combination of sodium hydroxide and potassium hydroxide, and it will all make sense, so bear with me. Now let's go back and we're going to measure it again, this time with potassium hydroxide, and I'm using 90% pure potassium hydroxide. If you can find 100% pure, you can use that, but I think it's very difficult to find 100% pure potassium hydroxide. And now we recalculate the same recipe with potassium hydroxide. Potassium hydroxide, we need 107 grams of potassium hydroxide for this. But as I said before, we're going to use 40% sodium hydroxide and 60% potassium hydroxide. So here's how you calculate the lye for this recipe. So you basically, the total lye that you're going to use for this recipe is going to be 40% sodium hydroxide, and we calculate sodium hydroxide to be 68.8 grams. So 40% of 68.8 plus 60% of potassium hydroxide, which is 60% of 107 grams. So you're using 27.5 grams of sodium hydroxide and 64.3 grams of potassium hydroxide. 27 grams of sodium hydroxide, 64 grams of potassium hydroxide. Cool, but how much water I add? Remember, we used 2 parts of water, 1 part of lye. How much lye do we have in total? We have 27.5 plus 64.3, we have 91.8 grams of lye. Since the total lye is 91.8, in order to calculate the water, which is basically we have 2 parts of water, 1 part of lye. That means in order to calculate the water, we need to multiply the lye by 2. So the amount of water we need is 183.6 grams. That's it. Basically, we are going to measure 27.5 grams of sodium hydroxide, 64 grams of potassium hydroxide. We add these in 183 grams of water. Always add the lye in water, never the other way around, because you can create a highly exothermic reaction that can basically be very dangerous. And one final thing for this recipe that we never do in any other of our soaps, and this is glycerin. What is glycerin? Glycerin is a byproduct of the saponification reaction. So basically, this is how it works. I'm gonna share my screen here to show you how the saponification actually works. You have a triglyceride. Basically, this is what oils contain. Oils contain triglycerides. They are basically glycerin bound together with fatty acid. 3 fatty acids. Fatty acids are stearic acid, oleic acid, lauric acid, all the acids that exist naturally in your coconut oil, shea butter, beef tallow, olive oil, and so on. In soap making, basically, you have sodium hydroxide. The hydroxyl part of sodium hydroxide will break the bond, and then the fatty acid will connect with sodium and this is basically the soap. The so-called soap is this part here, but then you also get glycerin. And glycerin is a byproduct of saponification, is basically what adds a lot of moisture in your soap. It's what makes your soap very, very moisturizing. And our soap, our saponification will produce glycerin naturally. But because we're going to use a shaving soap that basically is for the face, and I shave every single day, so I need something that is extra moisturizing and extra protective for the skin, then we are going to add at the end of saponification an extra 10% of glycerin. Since we're working with 500 grams, we're going to add an extra 50 grams of glycerin, and that will really add protection to your soap and make it perfect for shaving. This is a very unique recipe like no other we have done before. So let's get started, and we are going to first melt our solid butters, our stearic acid, our coconut oil, our beef tallow. Then we're going to add olive oil and castor oil, and then we're going to melt this, bring it to a very high temperature, 75 degrees. Then we're going to make the lye. Once we make the lye is actually exothermic, so this will also create a lot of heat, and we're going to mix them together in a high temperature. We're not going to basically heat our soap as you normally do in hot process soap, but we're just going to use the heat from the saponification reaction to make it happen. So let's first start by adding all of stearic acid, beef tallow, coconut oil, olive oil and castor oil into a stainless steel bowl, and then we're gonna melt it down over a double boiler. Let's go. And by the way, don't forget to comment I want the formulation if you want a free PDF that contains instructions on how to make 6 completely new skincare products with only 7 ingredients to prove to you that you don't need 100 different ingredients. You don't need to waste money in so many ingredients. You only need very few, tweak the ratios, and you get completely new products. So we are first gonna start with 250 grams of stearic acid. Then we're gonna go on with 150 grams of beef tallow. Then we're gonna go on with 50 grams of coconut oil, and then we're gonna go on with 25 grams of castor oil, and then 25 grams of olive oil. So let's go ahead and bring this over a double boiler. While we wait for our oils and butters and stearic acid to melt over a double boiler, let's go ahead and measure our lye. So we're gonna measure 27.5 grams of sodium hydroxide, and then we're gonna measure 64 grams of potassium hydroxide. And now let's go ahead and measure our water. We are adding 183 grams of distilled water. Butter is completely melted. Let's look at the temperature. The temperature is at 74 degrees Celsius. This is perfect. This is the perfect time to start making our lye solution, which is gonna get close to that temperature as well. And then we're ready to mix them together. Always make sure you wear gloves and you're in a well-ventilated area when working with lye. So always add the lye in the water, never the other way around. "71 degrees. This is perfect. This is almost the same temperature as our oils, butters, and stearic acid solution. We are ready to mix them together. Wow, how exciting is that? Are you guys ready? I know I am. Wow, almost immediately it starts becoming like this. Look at that. quite different of our other soap making where we're working in very low temperatures, because right now we're using the high heat to basically speed up the saponification. You can see now it starts becoming a translucent gel. This is the so-called gel phase. Can you see, guys? It's very shiny. So this is basically the gel phase. And now it's time to add the glycerin. We are adding 10% glycerin concentration, which is a total of 50 grams. Now for our amazing essential oil blend, we're gonna use patchouli, cedarwood, lavender, neroli and lychea cubeba. If you want the video that explains the reason why we add those essential oils and why this essential oil blend is very long lasting, make sure to check this video where I explain while essential oil blends fade and how to make them long lasting in soap making. And now let's go ahead and add it into our soap. So I'm gonna use this mold to transfer my soap here. So here's the result of the shaving soap. This is how it looks like the next day. And it smells amazing. I can't wait to try this. Look how much foam. All of this now you can apply it on your face. You see? Wow, wow, wow. That was amazing. This is one of my favorite soaps to make. Honestly, I can't wait for you to make it and use it yourselves. This is a phenomenal soap. It's very moisturizing for the skin. It's high in stearic acid, it's high in palmitic acid, or basically the saponified versions of stearic and palmitic acid that offer an amazing, creamy, luxurious and stable lather, exactly what you need for shaving. The glycerin is basically what takes this soap to the next level. So adding glycerin really makes it very moisturizing and overall an amazing soap to make. Very excited for you to try this. Let me know how it goes in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. And if you want basically to go from an overwhelmed beginner to a confident soap maker that understands formulations and not only copies recipes but also designs their own recipes based on their own goals, then I have an ebook that's called Clean Up Your Life, and it contains 15 tested recipes from soaps, dish soap, sensitive skin soap, body soap, hand soap, to shampoo, conditioner bars, hand creams, deodorants, lip balms and so on. I would like to say thank you for watching all the way to the end. I really appreciate you guys being here, and I'll see you next time.